morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my friend Paul Sperry. Hi, Paul.
Well, good morning, Kathy. It's wonderful to see your smiling face.
You're always so sweet. So you guys, this is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for you to meet Paul Sperry, who is an amazing research scientist and has an incredible appetite for learning about unusual aspects of life and making sense of them. And he's a dear friend. He and his wife, Marianne, are dear friends. And today we get to talk about two of some of my most favorite things, near-death experiences and ET encounters. Wow, how cool. So Paul, let's start with, so the audience understands, how did you get involved in this? How did you learn about all of this? I know the answer, but.
Okay. Let me first throw in a disclaimer. There's a new Murphy's Law, and that is that you only find out you're going to be on a live stream video the day after you have something removed off the end of your nose.
Oh, well, you still look handsome either way. So
you're too kind. So to answer your question, if I remember it, I've been interested in these things for a long time. I'm a scientist. I worked at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, and then the University of Colorado campus. And interdisciplinary work is my interest. And where I have sought to go in some cases is where science can assist in understanding something that may not have an explanation and yet is reproducible and occurs to many people. So that fits with the topic we have here, because we're looking at things that are intangible sometimes, almost always, and yet the people that have the experiences have no doubt that they're real. And so you cannot validate that scientifically, but you can validate the credibility of it by shared experiences and other people having the same experience independently. And so anyway, I've looked at the boundaries between disciplines, between science and physics and in metaphysics both, and it's kind of an interesting thing. So ask me another question here.
Well, what I love about all of this. Here we go. What I love about all of this is that the articulation of all of this multidimensional aspects of our reality through both of these fields, through the NDE research and the ET research, gives us a whole different reality or grasp of a reality that's so much bigger than what we know, and really helps us shine and really show up in such a different way, because we're co-creating with consciousness, like so many of the researchers on both fields have said, is that we're in this soup and we get to co-create with it. And so I love what you're doing. And I love, we also both did a little bit of volunteering. We've done volunteering for a lot of things, but you did SSE, which is the Society for Scientific Exploration. You co-started that in Boulder, Colorado, which I don't even know how many years you did that, Paul. And then you also were part of the ISSS when there was a system scientists international conference here. You assisted on that, me too. So you've been doing this work and helping other people ground this information for a long time.
Let me just add that there are many phenomena that we see in our world, and there's so much fake news and alternative facts. It's very important to be very discerning and using critical thinking about what you're seeing, and yet not denying your own experience. So if we all only accept and agree what can be validated in a laboratory, we will have a shared agreement, but it will be the lowest common denominator. And many of the answers that we need in our world and in our own personal lives are in the intangible realm where we know and feel things but can't prove it. So intuition, how do you prove that? Or telepathy, when you have an idea or a thought, there's something that occurs, or you have a voice that speaks to you, which has happened to me, maybe less than a dozen times, less than a half a dozen times. But when it has happened and I've heard a voice to say to change the flight characteristics of what we're doing, or I'm going to lose the plane, that happened to me. And I got a voice saying, sweep the wings now, when we were doing a very complicated maneuver. And I didn't think of it. We did it, and we just barely made it. My point really is not the flying, but the fact that in those moments when you need and to know something, you can get that information from yourself, from somebody else. I don't care where it comes from if it is useful and applicable information at that moment.
Right, right. Well, and trusting that everything's for your highest good. That's a whole different conversation. But so much of this information that we're getting, it makes you think there's a much bigger game in play, and that that you have an important role in it, and that there's a lot to be discovered in joy, not in fear. Right?
Yeah, we're all exceedingly important, and we don't oftentimes realize our own power, our own influence on the world. Some of the NDE experiences have shown us that we not only find out how things experienced in our own lives, but how we affected a whole train of actions of other individuals and beings in our lives. When you start taking full responsibility of all that you're doing, you take it very seriously, and yet still lightly and playfully. Life should be fun, and I do enjoy life. I love science. I love metaphysics as well. And so I'm just looking to see wherever the evidence leads and not be afraid to consider it, but don't automatically believe everything you think, and don't automatically dismiss things that you think are too far out.
Right. Well, don't you think it's also part of this is being able to put it into some orders? And sometimes a peak experience, whether it's a spiritually transformative experience, a near-death experience, or any sort of out-of-body kind of experience, sometimes it takes years to integrate that bigger view of your reality than what you had before. So that's another aspect of what you're doing that I really want to compliment you on, because this work is very important for us as a humanity to evolve to this, what Barbara Marx Hubbard called Homo universalis, this bigger, expanded, higher frequency human.
Yeah, I love Barbara. I've met her numerous times. Accidentally saw her across the room in Boulder here long ago. And what I would offer in addition is that we often think that we have lofty purposes, and it's always nice to have that. But the best thing that we can do in improving our world is to improve ourselves, to increase our awareness, to increase our perspective, and live the life that we want, rather than trying to go fix it by telling others what to do. Put that attention now. And one beautiful thing about getting a little older, and I'm a little bit older than you, in fact, a lot, is that I now take more time to do that inner review, to look at my journal of 40 years, seeing how the dots all connect, and coming to understand things that occurred in my early life that at the time seemed so unfair or stupid or unnecessary, and in retrospect showed or helped me to have the experience that I subsequently had that was better for me. So in my flying training, twice I got set back. One time for a cavity, where I was not considered for a promotion, because there were 500 people that didn't have a cavity and I had one. And I said, that doesn't apply to my flying, but they said that we have so many people, we have to, draw the line somewhere. My point there is that happened. And then a year later, I broke my hand playing basketball and got delayed another 6 weeks. And that enabled me to become flying the most advanced plane that we had, and it probably saved my life. At the time, I thought it was just a delay and a waste of time. And I now see the value of how that turned out.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I want everyone to watch Paul, because hopefully we'll have him on again on other subjects, because he's just got so much wonderful experience, and his worldview will help us as we go through this changing time to be able to center yourself and know what's right for you. Go to your heart and not just your head. So he's the new he's the representative for me of the new science that is not totally just here, like the system scientists convention we went to, conference that we went to, and one side to go, we need more testing, and the other side, we've done enough testing. Do you remember that conference in that auditorium? Oh my gosh, that was big for me. It was like, wow. So we really are going to a new kind of science, and everything is being realigned to something that's much more loving and equitable. And that's my knowing. And I think you're a big part of that, Paul.
You're reminding me of my work in climate science, where the evidence was just compelling that there's a change going on. People tended to want to polarize it and saying, well, it's human that causes it. Another group would say it's nature and not human. And they would make a false dichotomy when, in fact, both were occurring at the same time. And so they both found the evidence they wanted. But if they look beyond the argument and realize that humanity's activities are accelerating what's already occurring in a natural way, and looking at how do we adapt to all these changes rather than arguing who did it. The scientists would tend to just give more data when people wouldn't believe it. Well, many of these choices are made by emotion, not by rational logic. And so those of us that are left-brained don't realize how to be heard, or how to help people to address what is going on around us and not be in denial.
Right. Well, that's because you're a good listener. You want to hear both sides and then make up your own mind and bring it inside and figure out what's right. And so many other people have an ego response. They protect their
what I hear in my world. I don't automatically accept any of it, but I don't automatically reject it. I'm sure of only 10% of my world, I think. And I'm only sure that only 5% of it, is not real. And the rest of it, I'm not certain. So I make choices that are beneficial to me and everybody around me as I evaluate what's going on. And if an experience like a dream changes my life more than activities in my physical outer conscious life, which is more real, the one that affects my life and changes the way I see the world. Right. So some of my dreams have been more impactful than events.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. So the reason we're doing this wonderful interview today is because you are leading a panel at the IANDS conference that is coming up very soon, next week. And we're hoping that after you present the information about it, that more people will sign up, either to be there in person in Phoenix or to be online, because there is an opportunity to buy an online ticket and get recordings. So Paul, do you want to segue to your presentation now? I can add it to stage.
Go ahead and put it on the screen.
Okay.
There we are. So this is the conference that we're talking about, and it is coming up. You see the date there, August 28th. It's the next week. It is in the Phoenix area, south of Phoenix. The conference includes 4 keynote speakers, over 120 presentations, 7 workshops, 25 healing practitioners daily, and an exhibitor room with books and various things. So plenty to keep you challenged, occupied, and excited. Over 700 are attending in person, and we usually get around 200 live streaming online. And of course, you can look at the stuff if you work it out online afterwards at a later date too. So I'm amazed at how many people come to this. And I've been drawn in because of my wife's leadership in this that kind of evolved over time. And I've kind of joked that going to this is kind of like going to a new, kind of like a religious revival, except that there are no dogmas, there's no religion, there's no expectation, no tithe, no everything is just simply about life being so much greater than you could imagine, and all being underpinned by love. And so it just is I couldn't think of a better conference to go to walk away feeling fulfilled and also informed. So anyway, that's the conference. There's the link if you want to see it at the bottom of that page. And then I'll proceed. And Kathy, feel free to chime in with a question or comment if you like. So our conference, our panel is on NDEs, that's the near-death experiences, UFOs, I think everybody knows that, and ETs or extraterrestrial encounters. It's a discussion group. You see the four people here on this. I'm the moderator. Reverend Kathy Chapey has got a workshop on the IANDS website. PMH Atwater has been central to the overall organization since its inception, and Chris O'Connor is I'm just meeting him for the first time here. Somebody else built this panel together, and this guy has got experiences and a credible approach to informing humanity that is just marvelous. So I am looking forward to this discussion group with them. It'll be a 2-hour thing. It's on Saturday at 1:15 if you decide you're going to come join us. So I had a number of questions that were posed, about do we really dare talk about the commonality, I'll put this up again, of NDEs with UFOs and ETs. What draws them together? And it takes courage to publicly address the reality of such encounters. So discussing unconventional phenomena is not easy. When the Society for Scientific Exploration, we already talked about, once convened a Princeton University conference to consider the most compelling evidence of ET visitation, the scientists nearly revolted because of their inability to reconcile the facts with currently accepted beliefs. One of them was the head of the High Altitude Observatory I used to play bridge with, and it was really difficult because they used the best examples they had, and it was hard to explain them away. Our panel has considered the reality of ETs to the degree that we no longer question their existence, and thus will speak as though they are real, and we suggest that skeptics in the crowd temporarily suspend disbelief until the end of this discussion. It takes courage to do that, but you'll have a greater chance of picking something up if you don't immediately say that that's not real. Okay, so why a panel at IANDS combining these NDEs, UFO sightings, and ET encounters? The number of NDE accounts is growing, reports in the hospitals, with medical professions' technical ability to revive those who would have otherwise died. It somewhat began with many of the military vets in Afghanistan being recovered after death and then not being able to make sense of what in the world they were experiencing. And so IANDS is allowing them to come in for free to come and have the understanding at the conference here. And of course, I'm one of those military guys too. Those who return from a near-death experience, or NDE, uniformly report that their experience totally changes the way they live their lives. Well, those that have an extraterrestrial encounter often report the very same thing. NDEs often result in communication with non-physical entities. You see beings of light. You see who you identify as your spiritual leader. Well, ET encounters are often similarly non-physical, at least as we perceive physical. Neither can be explained, yet both are profound. So a lot of people who believe remain hesitant to admit it, at least publicly. A lot of people believe in NDEs and an afterlife, but they just don't believe it's accessible while you're still in the physical body. A lot of people believe in UFOs, but compelling proof has been suppressed, dismissed, or ridiculed. A lot of people believe in ETs or extraterrestrial life in our universe. It's got to be there. It's just hard to believe it wouldn't be. And yet they accept that the speed of light limitations preclude the ability of these species to physically reach Earth. Many of my colleagues will say, yeah, I'm sure there's life out there, but they have no way of getting here. 2.5 light years, 5 light years, 100. There's no way they could survive the trip. Well, that's if you accept that there is no way to travel faster than light. And we don't scientifically know that. And yet we see physical evidence in the quantum field of things like, what's the word, Kathy? Entanglement, where you see things that occur at great distances exactly at the same time, implying that something does travel faster than light. Okay, NDEs, UFOs, and ETs are all forms of ineffable knowing that once experienced changes the lives of those experiencers. So all three of these experiences lead to changes in your lives. And so IANDS is providing a forum for the discerning evaluation and wider dissemination and perhaps validation of such experiences. So there are continuing experiential reports that are revealing a consciousness that extends far beyond the physical body. Some of these experiences, many of us do know about NDEs, but there are things called shared death experiences, where somebody actually is with somebody who's dying, who sees what's going on and can't explain that. They're not dying themselves, but the love or the connection they feel with that person that's passing enables them to get a momentary glimpse. There are spiritually transformative experiences, many different kinds that I'll talk about in a minute. And there are end-of-life experiences. So there are a number of categories of consciousness experiences that cannot be explained and yet are occurring. So these are just a few of the ways of knowing exceptionally and are being revealed, explored, and validated. Once one relaxes the preconceptions of what is possible or acceptable, they now open a door to a wider awareness and richer reality that can start to seep in when we're not looking. So to add some context about the UFO reality, if you're not believing that there's anything there or it's all bogus, there were 440 documented UFO sightings worldwide just last month alone, or in June. I got this from MUFON. So you can see all the different countries. Don't read that. It's just a long list of countries. Even Yemen had one. United States had 327 sightings that were reported and documented. And the shapes of the different craft. Don't need to get into those details, but it's interesting. It's a bigger phenomenon than we think. So IANDS has a legacy of considering all forms of conscious experience. And these points I'm going to make now are showing where IANDS, even though they are a near-death phenomenon organization, they have been looking at a wider range that includes UFOs and ETs. So the IANDS founder and first president, Dr. Kenneth Ring, wrote the book, The Omega Project on Near-Death Experiences, UFO Encounters, and the Mind at Large. The IANDS current president, Dr. Jan Holden, has identified 3 experience categories and 23 phenomenon that mirror near-death experiences or otherwise reveal a deeper non-physical level of reality. One of the early members of IANDS, PMH Atwater, who is on our panel next week, has documented over 1,000 case studies is the author of over 20 books and will be publishing her latest book, Aliens and the Near-Death Experience, next year. IANDS sponsors an active UFO sharing group at the address you see here. And the IANDS board member, Angela Harris, who's just to use this as an example, speaks of her NDE and NET experience on YouTube at this address. So there's 5 examples right there, and I'll go into them a little bit more here. Here's the book from Dr. Kenneth Ring, and I'm reading mine right now. I just got it on Kindle, and so I can read it on the plane. He describes the similarities between the alien abductions and those who've had near-death experience. Those alien abductions were occurring in the 70s and 80s. They are largely not being reported now. I won't get into what that means, but we've been led to fear this in the early days, but we're not hearing those kinds of reports right now. So the second of my bullets here, the phenomena reveal the NDEs identified by our IANDS president. There are experiences that can occur during NDEs and also outside the context of the close brush with death. She identifies 8 different ones. I'm not going to go into them, but she has got published references on all these where people can go and look for themselves and see that there is published data on these. The second category she had was experiences that can occur after NDEs, as well in other circumstances apart from NDEs. There are a dozen categories there she saw, or examples. And then there are phenomena that do not typically occur either during or after NDEs, but have implications for an understanding of consciousness, the mind-brain relationship, and a passable afterlife. So she had 3 of those, and you can find that document at this link here too. So here's a preview of a picture that PMH Atwater's new book. This was drawn in at the time, a small town, Twin Falls, Idaho, only 1 month after the more famous Roswell alien craft event in 1947. This was drawn by the local newspaper, and there were the local commissioner and sheriff saw this craft. His son saw it. They had numerous interviews. Very endearing kind of story in a small town newspaper. Well, this is now going to finally come out. What's that? 70 years later. So it's been known but not talked about. Okay, this UFO ET NDE group, Catherine Chapey is in our panel next week. And Daniel Lambie is one of the board members who is on that as well at this link. That's a sharing group for everybody interested in the overlap between spirituality, NDEs, spiritually transforming experiences, and UFO ET experiences. From their own website, it says it's time to acknowledge the subject and bring it out of the shadows so more people can speak freely about it without repudiation. So this is occurring, I think it's every month. So you have these resources you can go to. Here's another one that IANDS is supporting that they're right now, as of today, 484 different videos, many of them on that ET experience at this link. So that's YouTube. So you have resources you can go and look for free, find out more if you have questions about that, or if you've got an old memory that you can't make sense of and you've explained it away, but it just won't let you go. So now I'm going to say that the consideration of UFOs and ETs is not any more shocking than NDEs. What we often experience is often shaped by what we expect or believe. NDEs by religious people often identify the light they encounter as their God. One of my colleagues, a scientist who died and came back, he told me, Paul, he said, I saw everything. He said, I saw every blade of grass. I didn't see that when I was there. How in the world is my review of life when I died and then came back? How could I see that? And he described how he saw his Jesus. Well, he is a practicing Catholic, and he was telling everybody he could for the next 3 weeks until he died for good, at least in that lifetime, this lifetime. We've been programmed for decades by frightening movies such as Alien or Independence Day and another dozen or two or five. But at Close Encounters had a positive theme. So did there's others. So you can find bent perspective on both sides. Some speakers talk of alien subjugation and that they're here to harvest us or to get what they want, at our expense, while others hope for a savior of humanity. Well, others will say too, if they have the technology to get here and they haven't done anything to subjugate us, it's not likely that's really their goal. That's how we see it, but we tend to fear what we don't understand. It's therefore critically important with any encounter, ET or NDE, that's supposed to say suspend your beliefs. Got to change that slide. Relax your expectations and use your discernment, critical thinking. One of my heroes in science is Nikola Tesla. The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, ETs, UFOs, NDEs, it will make more progress in one decade than in all previous centuries of its existence. So ET encounters can occur when you least expect it. This I can talk about my own experience, and so I'm going to share this. I'll read it to you here, although you can read it yourself. I personally had an unexpected ET encounter during what I thought was a hypnotic exploration of past trauma from my youth, when all of a sudden I saw this being in my closed eyes. I was initially confused, and my practitioner guided me in seeing what my mind could accept. I progressively saw 3 fingers, then she had me go up the arm. I saw long spindly arms. And finally, I went further up in what I was seeing because I could only see one thing at a time. And I saw these large almond eyes, and I said, uh-oh. And what convinced me that this was real and not just a remembered story or my own imagination is that when I asked if that's something that being had for me, it spoke to me, but I didn't hear words. I heard a symphony. I heard this strange music. That was something outside of anything I've ever heard or an experience that others have talked about. I didn't imagine that. I've never had a dream of that. So this was whenever something occurs in my world or my experience that is not expected and outside of my my memory, I tend to listen. And I concluded that my brain was interpreting a complex communication as music that I didn't yet have the capacity to interpret. And at that point, the being started to recede away. I could now see the whole thing, and it started to back away. And I kind of quipped with a smile. I said, was it something that I said? And the message that I got, and then I did get a message, I guess, was that you've received all that you're capable of receiving at this time. So is that real? Well, I feel like I'm changed. When an encounter with an ET leads, the title here is it leads to a surprising realization. I know of 2 experiencers that I'm not going to identify, but they're 2 friends. When I had them both speak, they both are international speakers. They go around the world. And when they spoke of their experience with ETs that they stood in front of, they saw. One was 10 feet tall in a mist, in a remote area. And I've forgotten the other one. But when I heard their talk, they said that they felt apprehension during their encounters. So afterwards, I asked them both independently on 2 different days. I said, you're trained to do this. You've done this for 20 years. You've talked about it forever. Why did you feel apprehension? We finally realized in dialogue with it that it wasn't fear of the beings. There was nothing that they did that was threatening. It was the energy field in which they were immersed that was so powerful that they feared losing connection with their own identity. They felt like they were just going to be lost, subsumed in the energy of that field of energy. One of my teachers has told me that a stronger mind will dominate a weaker mind, whether they want to or not. And we're fledglings here, maybe on the world. We're just now beginning to experience these communication. So what does all this mean for us? NDE reports have opened us to the reality of non-physical experiences and the expression of consciousness in other forms, perhaps in any form. Consciousness is consciousness. I believe that consciousness develops to the degree that that form of life needs it. So we have an understanding of what we need to conduct our lives. But a tree, which I don't think anybody would disagree, has consciousness of some degree. They don't need to know about airline schedules because they have no need or desire or ability to use that kind of experience. But they do understand water and soil and life in a forest. So many former UFO researchers have moved beyond phenomena to what an ET presence means for humanity as a whole. The reality of NDE experiences demonstrates that we are all connected and that accepting this larger reality is changing how we live our lives. While extraterrestrials can clearly be quite different from us and probably are, there is more that unites us than divides us. Their mothers probably love them too, you know. As humanity comes to realize we have far more potential than once assumed, we can begin to realize our power and become more responsible in how we live our lives. I think that we have condemned ourselves by looking at our news and the way we fight and live our lives, that we are self-deprecating. But as I get older, I'm coming to accept that we have a lot more power and ability to create than we know. And we are not thinking or acting with full realization of our abilities. And so I'm suggesting that can change through these experiences. So I'm returning to this slide to remind you of why we were talking about this topic, and that this event occurs starting next Wednesday with workshops, and Thursday with the lectures and events in just south of Phoenix. It's on an Indian reservation, the Gila Bend area. It's quite beautiful, and if you're afraid of the temperatures, which I am, their highs there, or their lows at night, are higher than our highs here in Colorado. But apparently the facility is so large you don't even have to leave it in order to do everything you need. And it looks like a beautiful location. Here's a picture of it at Wild Horse Pass. I can't wait. I hope to see some of you there. And I'll close here with the words of a very revered astronomer, the late Carl Sagan, who said, "The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence." Think about that. All right. Thank you for that. Kathy, I'll turn this off and return to our dialogue until we run out of time.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. That was perfect. That was absolutely perfect. Paul, I have a question about the research that's being done that IANDS and PMH Atwater is doing. Do you think, and this is maybe from what you've read or what you've experienced, that some of these people that have near-death experiences are having walk-in experiences, and that's why they also are having ET encounters, that maybe a being's soul is placed in the body as the other soul leaves, another soul comes into the vessel, into the avatar body, and then the ETs are checking up. I just think there were a lot of souls that wanted to be here during this changing time, and there weren't enough bodies. 8 billion weren't enough, apparently. And so what do you think about walk-ins?
Kathy and I have known each other forever, but we did not plan this conversation in advance. And you've just now limited who I'm going to show this video to a little bit. But if
Oh,
you
I'm
know,
sorry. Well, you
oh,
can
okay.
say I don't want to talk about it.
Oh, I could, but I do. So I will back up just a little bit and say that we tend to think that this right here is Paul Sperry and that's Kathy over there. And that to me is more of an avatar, a body, a vehicle for expression, a vehicle for experience. And so I've got these five senses, but that I know of physically, but many, many more. And I'm having difficulty as I do my own inner work, spiritual work, and even science, as to identify where one boundary ends and another boundary begins. You know that when you get with somebody that you link into or resonate with or sink in, whether it's a lover or a revered friend, there all of a sudden there's a new awareness and a new ability to almost detect what they're going to say next, and you feel that sense of oneness. Well, I'm having difficulty identifying what's what and what's where what is a soul and what is a consciousness here, because I don't think it's contained anymore. My current understanding, I'll go even further than you here, is that we tend to think of that we are a body and we have a soul and we have a life afterwards, maybe. But that it may be that there are more than one physical body that one soul can animate. And there may be more than one body can maybe accommodate more than one soul have an experience in it. And it becomes hard to say, who and what is having the experience. When I've had some of my experiences with practitioners, I end up talking about Paul. And then I get to thinking, if you do a regression, if you are familiar with that, who in the heck is talking? Is it this thing here? Out of my mouth, I'm saying, well, Paul is not really accepting of that idea. What the heck? Now, what's going on now? So I guess I am open to the possibility of anything that I receive, as long as I apply that critical thinking and not jump at doing something that I get just because I heard it on the internet. Not just because I heard something in my head does not mean that it's any wiser than what I've got, consciously. But I'm trying not to figure it out over here. I'm trying to feel it in an integrated way as to a fuller truth, not just a left brain logical truth.
Oh, wow. You just said so much. Okay. So one of the people that was interviewed for PMH's new book is one of my friends, childhood friends. And I encouraged her to fill out the paperwork. And I think she made it in the book. And in her storyline, she was 11 when she had the near-death experience. And within that 12 months afterwards, she did have an ET encounter. And I think that was the criteria that PMH used. And so PMH at the time, last time I heard about it, I haven't talked to her recently, there were like 26 stories that made it into that book. And so it's fairly common, or people are now more comfortable talking about it. And I think that's just fascinating. That's why I asked about a walk-in, if it was ET and they're just checking on people. The other thing you mentioned was about multiple souls in one body. And another one of my friends and clients is I watched them fight. And eventually the original soul did go, and without death, without a near-death experience, but they came to an agreement. And but you could almost hear them having out loud conversation, just like you'd have your angel, good angel and bad angel on each shoulder saying, do it, don't do it, do it, do it. That's what would happen with her. And then she's unbelievably powerful now. I mean, it's like when her original soul left, she took the brakes off, and she's out there working internationally, has 90,000 practitioners of her healing modality. It's unbelievable watching the before and after. What do you think about? That's why I asked about walk-ins, because wow.
So when you haven't defined a walk-in yet here, I do know of somebody who one of my teachers actually had what you would call this walk-in, where he drowned, and when he came, when he was recovered, barely lived, barely survived, he'd actually died in the waters in Hawaii. And he had changed. It was a change inside of him. His own wife didn't understand what was going on. He didn't have any idea. They figured out that he had forgotten through the trauma that he didn't know who he was. Turned out he was another being that had taken over that body, but not taken over, given. It's not like as body snatchers here. It was like it was a conscious choice, perhaps pre-programmed before life, like Dr. Michael Newton, talks about these things in his life. I forgot the name of the title of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the idea that this walk-in, it sounds insidious, but this was an amazing situation. And this individual that died became a teacher and a philosopher instead of a real estate agent. I've worked with him for 20 years, 40 years, almost 40 years. And he ended up being a medium and channel for a teacher on the inner. So I want to add now to this whole idea that whether it's a soul or not, what's coming in or not, each of us is so complicated that we have what I call these and others call these different aspects of ourselves. So I'll be doing something and all of a sudden something will pop up that is like an old trauma that triggers me. And so you will get triggered by something occasionally. So when somebody triggers that button, we call it, all of a sudden this side of me comes out that is just angry or combative and other things that trigger me to, great senses of just love and compassion. And I watch my own consciousness kind of shift around from day to day in my events. And I'm now asking, am I a collection of all these different aspects that reside somewhere in my body or DNA or my mind field? Because I do not believe that the mind and the brain are the same thing. The brain operates the body, but the impressions that the brain has are coming from that mind field of information. Some would say an Akashic field is, that field of information, and that it's non-physical, and that the brain, when you map it in the laboratory, you're mapping the brain communicating as an interferometer with that field of information that comprise who the real me is. And, people like who wrote, I'm having my senior moment here. They've written about their experiences of life after death, passing and coming back. The doctor, the neurosurgeon. Help me out here.
Mary.
No.
Okay. Well, there was Anita Morjani talked about.
No.
Okay.
I'm talking about the.
Raymond Moody.
I'll use him. That's not who I'm thinking about either. But he was a neurosurgeon and he wrote the book.
Eben Alexander.
Eben Alexander. I mean, he's a friend. I've talked with him at Aspen. I've talked with him at IANDS. Here's a doctor who would explain to his clients when they died how the brain went through all these events, the shutdown, lack of oxygen, all these things. And so he had 9 different list of 9 excuses or explanations, actually, of why your client, your family member came back and reported all these things. And then he had bacterial meningitis so bad that all brain activity stopped. And even his own peers, doctors, said, pull the plug, because he was no longer there and there was no activity. Right. And then he heard a voice, I believe, as I remember, from his son far, far, far away, saying, Dad, come on back, or something like that. He came back, and he then went through that whole list of all those 9 excuses and explained how that was not true. His own truth was now disproven by his own experience. And he is a powerful teacher of this. He stopped doing surgeries now. He's now running the world, sharing his story. So these stories, when you hear so many of them, they're compelling. You can hear 1 or 2 or 5, and you think, well, that's interesting. They're making up their story. They're getting their following. But when you hear 700, it's just kind of hard to say. You can't explain it away. Something is occurring here. And by the way, the outcome of what happens if these are true is pretty upbeat. It's like, I like that story. I'd like to believe in all that. Some near-death experiences can be a little bit dark, but again, they're reflecting what you expect. And so one of the benefits of going to these events is that you have this reinforcement of how it can be, to the degree that I'm not even afraid. If I checked out tomorrow, I don't feel cheated. I've still got more to do. But, one of the things about this conference, that people not only are no longer afraid of death, they're no longer afraid of life.
Exactly.
It's better to go ahead and experience and do things and make mistakes and fail and be vital, so it's pretty upbeat. I mean, I'm beginning to sound like a zealot here. You need to come.
Well, I got involved 7 years ago, and my quest was because I had so many spiritually transformative experiences, and I felt it, but I didn't have a way to articulate it. And so I would listen to these brilliant people like Reverend Peter Panagore and PMH, and I could just go down a list of them that just are brilliant articulators of the expanded capabilities that we have. And then I had words that I could use to share more than frequency. And that was amazing. The other thing I wanted to ask Paul about all of this is, I know and hopefully you'll validate what I'm saying. I find that when you go to an event like this and you are highly sensitive, which any of these extraordinary experiences does make you more sensitive physically. You actually sense your environment more, you're more aware of your environment. What happens when you go to an IANDS conference is it's as though you're in Sedona walking into a bubble, a vortex. You walk into this bubble and the atmosphere is filled with a different kind of energy, because the people that have experienced want to live in that same frequency. They practice remembering. They practice bringing that into this reality. And do you feel that too when you're in group with these people?
This is interesting because it's probably because I'm a scientist or a rationalist. I don't have the feelings that you do, or many do. So people that can feel the energy, including my own wife, she feels it so strongly, she has to get away from it sometimes. If it is a cacophony, if it's too noisy or too overwhelming. So I do know that people do feel this stuff. I can tell you that I don't feel it the same way, where I can put my hand out, and feel it. And yet I have learned to dowse. So I'm learning to use a non-physical, it's actually a physical tool to reveal something that I can find, like finding, think of finding water, but I've used the dowsing to find energy lines at places like Avebury or Stonehenge or other places around the world that our forebears and our ancestors who weren't bombarded with Starlink and TV and cell phones and everything else, they could feel the energy out there. And so I'm getting to the answer here is that different people feel different levels. I don't feel it quite the way many do, but I do feel at the IANDS conference this feeling of exuberance, of enthusiasm, of joy. Maybe it's just joy, because they're not trying to convince you of anything. No. That's another thing. When you have had this profound experience, you don't have to convince anybody else. If they don't want to accept it, I got a lot of friends, that are atheists. They don't believe any of that. And that's fine with me. I'm not going to waste their time or mine. But if they want to know or share, what a joy it is to share. So it does feel very good at this conference. And so I think you are right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think what people find is that they're in a common ground. So it's not like going to a regular conference where you're networking or you're learning, where it's book learning. This is a feeling of remembering, and then it reinforces that. That's what I was hoping. And then the other thing is that I find, and you mentioned it in your presentation, and afterwards you mentioned it, I think twice, about the courage and the way people come back after both of the ET experience as well as the near-death experience, with a kind of take the foot off the brakes lifestyle, which is what you articulated for yourself as well. Could you just talk a little bit about that too?
We all, I think, have the weakness of wanting to be accepted and wanting to appear normal. One of my teachers jokes to us about how hard we seek to appear normal to people we don't even know. And so we're all looking for acceptance. We're all insecure. And when you've had experiences like the NDE types experiences, you don't worry about that apparently anymore. Now, here's the irony. Here I am. I've been in at least 8 death potential situations. I've never had what you'd call the traditional NDE. And I'm not, for the record, I'm not looking to go get one at this point in my life. I don't feel like I need to do that. I've had enough spiritually transformative experiences, enough to know that I'm okay not being proven that it's that way. As a scuba diver, when I dive, you put all this gear on, you put this heavy wetsuit, you put these heavy tanks, you put these flippers so you can't walk, and then you put this tank on, you can't breathe, then you put a mask on, you can't see, and you jump in the water and it's cold. And so it's like going into, I liken that to going into a body. And after you've been down there for 20 minutes, you start to accommodate it and you forget that you're down there and it's great and it's beautiful and it's fun. And then when you come back up on the boat, oh, it's so heavy. And you take off your mask and you're blinded. Well, that's kind of like taking off your body, and going into the other side. So I've got an idea of what it feels like to go back and forth between the two and don't feel the need to do it. To convince me of what I am accepting and how I'm living my life. So did I answer the question anywhere in there?
Yeah. Well, I think we both are very lucky that we've been able to have common experiences without a major damage to our bodies, because a lot of these people, the things that they've gone through, and many of the near-death experiencers have multiple near-death experiences, which is like, oh my, wasn't one enough? That's so hard. But as far as spiritually transformative experiences, I never stop having them now. I mean,
your family probably thinks you're weird.
Well, they always did.
Yeah. Well, I don't.
Yeah. After a while, it's like, oh well, it's out of the box. So anyway, so Paul, I want to make sure that people know about the website to go to for the IANDS conference, and if we want them to be able to go to your website and learn. You are have so much wonderful information. You have lots of. I was surprised how many lectures you have up on your site and everything. Do you want to share how people can get in touch with you?
My wife kind of makes me do all these things. She's the one that put the website up there. She's the one that told me to do the interview with you, and I only just found out about it. I had no time for this, but in the past, I've done this where it usually works out if you just let go and allow whatever's going to flow. As we've been talking, I felt this presence that kind of popped in.
Yeah.
And so I'm less afraid to take the leap on these things. And So yeah, you can, if you've got the website there, you can show it up.
Okay, I will. Oh, I don't have it up to show, but I'll put it in the comments to make sure people have it.
There's not that much material on there. I just have a placeholder there for my future. But do put the IANDS stuff up there.
PaulSperryBoulder.com.
I want to also add that my wife, Marianne, is the conference chair for all this stuff. And so I'm the one that's carrying her luggage, you know, and I never intended to get involved with all this stuff. But that has been so reinforcing for her and quite a challenge. And so that's how I got involved with this. I wouldn't have done this interview if it hadn't been for my wife again. So thank you.
And I have to say, I'm so glad you did, Paul, because you are a wonderful speaker, and the perspectives that you have create a bridge for people that are just opening up to this new knowledge. So that is so, so important when people are in this environment of change and you can't tell who's telling you the truth. Your presentation today gave people a way to feel into it and learn knowledge that, and Marianne put a heart here for you.
Your use of the word bridge is a compliment of high regard. I do look at myself as like a translator, you know, somebody who has got a foot on the grounded physical and has got a foot in the uncertain. And I'm not afraid to do that. And I'm trying to allow one to communicate with the other, the physics and the metaphysics. And so if somebody finds that they find me as a bridge, that's high praise. Thank you.
Oh, yes, of course. And this is a big opportunity for so many people to expand their perspective of what they can do in the world and release their programs that their parents lovingly gave to us to try to keep us safe, but no longer serve. And so thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. And we're gonna sign off now, but want everyone to remember and just know that if you can not go in person to the IANDS conference, that the online conference will give you so much of a benefit. And this is their major fundraiser, the one big one they do all year. So you'd be helping support a 40-year-old organization to continue this beautiful work at a time when everyone needs this work.
Kathy, and I've got to interrupt you just to say I have such respect for you, for the work you are doing.
Oh, thank you.
All of this, these interviews, it is a wonderful, tremendous gift. You're the bridge as well. So it's an honor to stand next to you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
I'll give you a big hug. I might see you this weekend. Bye, dear. Bye. Thank you. Signing off. Thank you, guys. Please share this and please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you can. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.